They say that before Babylon, before before the great empires that carved their names into stone, there was a city born from the hands of gods, a place where rivers met the sea and wisdom flowed like water. Its name was Eridu. But was it truly the first city of humankind? Or was it something far older, something not entirely built by human hands? Beneath the cracked earth of southern Iraq, there are whispers of temples swallowed by time, sealed chambers untouched for thousands of years, and a throne said to belong to Enki, the god who gave mankind the very idea of civilization. Tonight, we step into the dust and silence of the world's first city and search for what still lies hidden. The desert wind moves strangely here, not as a gentle whisper, but as if carrying the weight of an ancient memory, a murmur from a time before pyramids, before stone temples, before even the first kings wrote their names in clay. Beneath the endless stretch of the southern Mesopotamian horizon, the ruins of Eridu sleep. They do not call to the passerby. They do not glitter like lost treasure. They wait patiently, stubbornly, as if guarding a story the world has almost forgotten. But some say Eridu is more than just ruins, that beneath its dust lies the heartbeat of humanity's first city and the throne of a god who once walked among men. In the chronicles of the ancients, Eridu was not merely a settlement. It was the first city, the birthplace of kingship, the stage where heaven touched earth. It was here, according to the Sumerian king list, that kingship descended from the heavens, and at its heart stood a sanctuary not built for mortals, but for Enki, the god of wisdom, water, and creation. But Eridu's greatness is not the only thing buried here. Beneath its layers of sand, under shattered walls and forgotten ziggurats, lie sealed chambers archaeologists have never opened, and tunnels whose existence is known only through half-erased tablets and whispered speculation. We begin our journey here, not at the height of its glory, but in the strange twilight between myth and memory, where the truth hides in fragments, and the gods seem almost human. The god who walked among men. If Uruk was the city of kings and power, Eridu was the city of the gods. Ancient Sumerian tablets speak of it not as a mere settlement, but as the home of the divine. In fact, the Sumerian king list, a record that blends myth and history, begins not in not in Uruk, but here declaring, when kingship descended from heaven, kingship was in Eridu, and at the center of Eridu's spiritual heart stood the throne of Enki, god of wisdom, creation, fresh waters, and mischief. Enki was no distant deity, unreachable behind the clouds. According to the stories etched into clay, he walked among the Sumerians, teaching them how to farm, how to build canals, how to make beer, and how to settle disputes with fairness. His temple, called Abzu, House of the Abyss, was said to be built above the cosmic waters that nourished the earth. The Abzu wasn't just a mythological term. In Sumerian belief, it was the subterranean ocean, a vast and mysterious reservoir of life-giving water deep beneath the ground. Priests claimed that Enki's temple sat directly over one of the gateways to this hidden realm. But there are whispers in later Mesopotamian traditions, ones that archaeologists still debate, that Enki's dwelling wasn't limited to the visible temple. Beneath Abzu, there were chambers carved into the bedrock, corridors that descended into darkness, and vaulted halls where the air smelled of salt and minerals, as though the sea itself was seeping through unseen cracks. Some researchers believe these underground chambers were symbolic, representing the divine waters of the Abzu. Others suspect that ancient Sumerians, with their ingenuity, might have actually engineered subterranean sanctuaries for ceremonial purposes, places now buried under layers of silt and time. The most intriguing clue comes from fragments of ancient hymns. They describe the temple's lower levels as a place where the eyes see not, where the ears hear whispers from the deep, and where the walls drip with the tears of the earth. Could this have been a literal description? If so, these words hint at a space far more mysterious than the visible ruins we see today, a hidden domain connected to both the earth and the divine. Even more compelling is the suggestion, preserved in some Akkadian retellings, that certain objects of power, offerings, tablets of knowledge, perhaps even the plans for the first cities, were sealed within these depths. If true, then Eridu is not just the oldest city in the world. It may be the keeper of secrets no archaeologist has yet touched. And yet, the ruins we see above ground are barely a whisper of what Eridu once was. Beneath the sun-baked mounds, the Abzu remains mostly unexcavated. Political tensions, environmental challenges, and the sheer fragility of the site have kept archaeologists from digging too deep. Which raises the question, are we preserving a priceless heritage, or are we unknowingly allowing its greatest secrets to remain forever hidden under the sands of time? Beneath the waters and stones, beneath the blistering sun, where the Tigris and Euphrates once danced in silver threads, Eridu lay like a relic half-remembered. The ziggurat towered above the barren plain, but its grandeur was only half the story. Locals whispered that the true heart of Eridu was not above the ground, but buried deep beneath it. For centuries, scholars believed these were just myths, folklore born from the Sumerians' love of grand tales. But during a low water season in the early 1900s, workers dredging a canal near the ancient site stumbled upon something strange. Slabs of stone etched with spirals, fish-like motifs, and inscriptions that did not match known Sumerian writing styles. The stones were heavier than basalt, with a strange blue-black sheen that shimmered in the sun. Some claimed they smelled faintly of salt water, though the sea was hundreds of miles away. These artifacts were sent to museums, where they still baffle experts. The spirals seem to match astronomical patterns, specifically the cycles of certain bright stars visible in the southern hemisphere. But why would Sumerian builders, in the world's first recorded city, be tracking constellations they couldn't possibly see from their own skies? Unless the markings weren't for the sky at all, but for something else, something hidden beneath the earth. The deeper one digs into Eridu's story, the more water appears, not just as a physical element, but as a presence. Enki, the city's patron god, ruled over wisdom, magic, and water. Temples built in his honor were designed with intricate canals, pools, and drains. These weren't mere decorations. They were functional, moving water in ways that modern engineers still struggle to understand. Some channels led nowhere, terminating in sealed stone shafts that descended into the dark. Ancient texts refer to them as the throats of the deep, passageways to the Abzu, the primeval subterranean ocean where Enki was said to dwell. Excavations in the 1940s revealed a network of chambers carved directly into the bedrock beneath the main temple mound. Many of these rooms were flooded, even though the modern water table lay far below. Some explorers who descended into these flooded tunnels claimed to hear the sound of flowing water when none was visible. One diver, who ventured too far into a narrow submerged passage, emerged pale and shaking, refusing to speak of what he had seen. He resigned from the expedition the very next day. The mystery deepened when a series of cuneiform tablets, recovered from the upper levels of the ziggurat, spoke of a throne of Enki placed in the chamber where the waters meet the stars. The phrase puzzled translators, How could waters meet stars? Was it a poetic metaphor? Or a literal location, perhaps deep underground, where reflective water mirrored the night sky? Locals, even today, claim that on certain nights, especially when the moon is high and the desert air is still, the ruins of Eridu seem to hum with a low vibration. Some believe it is the sound of water moving through unseen channels. Others whisper that it's the voice of Enki himself, guarding whatever remains in those hidden chambers. And so, Eridu's legend remains split in two: the visible glory of the world's first city above, and the shadowed, water-bound world beneath. For every stone unearthed, another mystery emerges, a reminder that even at the dawn of civilization, there were already secrets buried too deep for the sun to reach. Whispers beneath the stone. Beneath the quiet sands of Eridu, the stories grew darker. While the temple's grand ziggurat rose toward the heavens in Enki's honor, whispers told of something far older hidden deep below, a labyrinth of chambers carved before the city itself existed. The surviving tablets mention them only in fragments. They speak of the deep houses of the Abzu, the mythical freshwater ocean over which Enki reigned. To the common people, it was poetry, but to the priests it was a coded truth, an admission that beneath Eridu's shining walls lay something no sunlight had touched for millennia. Some claimed the chambers held relics gifted by Enki himself, vessels that never ran dry, stones that glowed in eternal blue light, and tablets bearing scripts that no living scribe could read. Others said they were prisons, vaults meant to lock away the dangerous wisdom of a time when gods and mortals walked the same roads. What made these stories all the more compelling was the strange reality of Eridu's foundations. Unlike many Sumerian cities built directly upon the flat plains, Eridu was raised over layer upon layer of older structures, each swallowed by sand and mud, as if the city had been built again and again over the same sacred spot. Archaeologists would later find evidence of at least 18 distinct construction phases, stacked like pages of a book no one had ever fully read. It was in the 12th layer down, so the legends go, that the workers of an ancient king stumbled upon a sealed stone doorway. The inscriptions on it were unlike any Sumerian writing they knew. It wasn't Akkadian, Babylonian, or even the proto-cuneiform of their ancestors. It was older, stranger, and curved like flowing water. The priests, upon seeing it, ordered the workers to stop. The doorway was resealed, offerings were made, and the chamber was left untouched. Some said the king himself descended into that door one night, taking only a torch and a handful of guards. He returned alone at dawn, pale as clay and silent for days. From that moment onward, no one was allowed near the site, and the chamber's location was erased from public memory. But not from the earth. In the late 19th century, during the first modern excavations in southern Mesopotamia, explorers noted something odd in their reports. Tunnels beneath the Eridu mound that did not match Sumerian architecture, narrower, smoother, as if carved not by human hands, but by flowing water or something imitating it. One dig leader even claimed his team heard the faint sound of water running deep below, though the nearest river lay far from the site. His notes mention a faint, salty breeze in those tunnels, carrying with it the smell of something ancient and metallic, like a coin kept too long in a closed fist. The deeper they went, the stranger it became. Walls lined with an unknown black stone that reflected torchlight like rippling water. Pictographs of fish-headed beings that were not in any known Sumerian pantheon. And at the very end of one passage, a door carved from a single slab of basalt, perfectly smooth, with no visible hinges or seams. The team could not open it. They did not even try for long. Within a week, the dig was mysteriously halted, funding withdrawn, and the workers dismissed without explanation. Those notes, now mostly hidden in private collections, sparked one question that has never truly faded. What lies sealed beneath the city of Eridu? And perhaps more unsettling, was Enki, the god of water and wisdom, a creation of the Sumerians' imagination, or a memory of someone or something that had once lived here? The desert has kept its answer well, but every sandstorm uncovers a little more stone, and one day the doors of the Abzu might open again, whether we are ready or not. The shadow of the deep chambers. Beneath the blistering sun of southern Mesopotamia, Eridu's ruined mounds looked deceptively quiet. Most travelers passed them by without a second glance, just another pile of ancient mud brick, eroded by thousands of years. But those who had studied the city's lore knew better. The temple ruins above were only a fragment of what once was. The true secrets lay below. Archaeologists who first arrived here in the early 20th century were guided by local whispers. The earth beneath Eridu is hollow. The old herders claimed that in the heat of summer, the ground near the temple felt unnaturally cool, as if the deep soil was breathing. It was there, according to the myths, that Enki's sacred waters still flowed underground, hidden from human eyes. When the first survey teams dug deeper than the visible ruins, they uncovered layer after layer of temples, each older than the last. At the lowest levels, they found strange, water-worn stones that didn't match the local geology at all, as if they had been brought here from distant lands. Some stones were arranged in deliberate channels, still faintly glistening with moisture. It was here that the stories of Abzu, the freshwater abyss ruled by Enki, began to feel less like metaphor and more like memory. The deeper they dug, the stranger it became. In one chamber, they uncovered a sealed doorway, its bricks harder than any others in the site, fused together as though by intense heat. No tool could break through without risking collapse. What lay beyond remained an unanswered question, an unopened page in the history of Eridu. But more puzzling were the artifacts found in the surrounding rooms. Cylindrical seals depicting humans standing beside fish-like beings. Walls etched with patterns that looked like waveforms, and inscriptions in Sumerian that referenced the Room of First Waters, a place where the god Enki shaped the destinies of men. Some modern researchers believe these underground structures were advanced hydraulic systems, ancient reservoirs designed to keep Eridu's people alive during the scorching droughts. But others, drawn to the city's mythical aura, see them as something far more mystical, perhaps ritual chambers where the Sumerians sought communion with their god, or even where ancient initiates were reborn through sacred water rites. Whatever their purpose, the deeper ruins of Eridu remain largely unexcavated due to the high water table and the danger of collapse. This has only fueled speculation. If Enki was indeed seen as the keeper of hidden knowledge, could the sealed chambers contain records of a forgotten chapter of human civilization? Perhaps even before the Sumerians themselves? Some believe the city was built on top of something much older, and that Eridu's first settlers merely inherited a place of power, repurposing it as their religious center. In this view, Enki wasn't just a god. They saw him as the guardian of a far older legacy. As the sun sets over the desert, casting the ruins in golden light, it's hard not to feel the weight of that buried mystery. Somewhere beneath these mounds, the waters of Abzu may still lap quietly against stone, guarding secrets the modern world is not yet ready to understand. Beneath the dust and rubble, Eridu's forgotten heart still pulsed quietly in the earth. Archaeologists, having unearthed layer after layer of the city's foundations, began to notice something unusual. Unlike other ancient cities that grew outward, Eridu seemed to have grown upward, built over itself again and again, as if each new temple to Enki had to rise directly above the last, stacking history like a layered offering to the heavens. The earliest layers dated to around 5,400 BCE, astonishing even the most skeptical historians. But the deeper they dug, the stranger the discoveries became. In the deepest strata, stone and baked mud brick gave way to something far older, a mixture of compacted clay and smooth, water-worn slabs, as though the first builders had reclaimed materials from a place that had stood before Eridu itself. Some whispered theories about a pre-Sumerian culture, one that Enki's priests might have inherited knowledge from. The thought was tantalizing. If Eridu had been built upon the remnants of an even older civilization, could Enki's divine status have been born from the memory of ancient kings, or beings, whose wisdom surpassed even that of the Sumerians? The temple's unfinished story. The main ziggurat, the Iabzu, had been reconstructed over at least 16 distinct phases. Each layer was grander than the last, but strangely, the oldest levels were the most sophisticated. Fine stonework and intricate drainage channels hinted at a mastery of engineering the later builders struggled to replicate. Water, of course, was central to the entire design. Every corridor, every chamber seemed to channel, store, or sanctify it. The Abzu, the mythical freshwater ocean beneath the earth, was believed to be directly accessible from Eridu's temple. Priests claimed that Enki himself emerged from these sacred waters to bring wisdom to humanity. But there were passages beneath the temple that no one could fully explain. Some were blocked by deliberate stone seals. Others ended in smooth, featureless walls. The local workers refused to break through them. They told stories of strange humming sounds that echoed up through the floor at night, and of shadows that flickered in torchlight, without any source. The Forbidden Chamber 1 tunnel, discovered in the late 19th century by a British excavation team, descended far deeper than expected. At its base was a narrow archway leading into what appeared to be a natural cavern. In its center stood a massive stone basin carved from a single block of black diorite, a material incredibly difficult to work with, even for later civilizations. The basin was filled with water so still it reflected like polished glass. According to one archaeologist's private notes, when he touched the water, it was unnaturally cold despite the desert heat, and his hand tingled as though brushed by an electric current. Within weeks of this discovery, the excavation was mysteriously halted. Official records blamed structural instability and danger to workers, but rumors claimed one of the archaeologists had vanished after entering the chamber alone. His belongings were found neatly placed by the basin, but there was no sign of his body. The site was sealed, and the records about it buried in archives where only a handful of researchers could access them. A throne beneath the city legends persisted that somewhere beneath Eridu was Enki's true throne, not a mere ceremonial seat, but an object of immense power, crafted from materials not found anywhere in Mesopotamia. Some descriptions hinted at lapis lazuli and gold, others at an unknown metal shining like the moon and cool to the touch. A cuneiform tablet recovered from Eridu in the 1940s referenced the seat of the deep waters, said to grant visions of the beginning of the world to those deemed worthy. However, the same text warned of madness to any who sought it unprepared, for the truth of the first dawn is a burden even the gods do not bear lightly. Whether the throne ever truly existed or was a metaphor for divine wisdom remains unclear. Yet modern satellite imaging has detected anomalies beneath the ruins, patterns suggesting vast chambers still untouched. An unfinished mystery. Today, Eridu lies silent, its ancient bricks baking under the relentless sun. Yet every gust of wind across the site seems to whisper the same question. Was this truly the first city of man, or was it the last monument of a forgotten world? Beneath its foundations, the throne of Enki, whether myth or reality, may still wait in the darkness, guarded by secrets as old as time. And until the last stone is lifted, the lost heart of Eridu will continue to pulse unseen, drawing those who dare to seek the truth into the depths of its mystery. Whispers beneath the stone's night fell over Eridu, wrapping the ruins in a deep, inky stillness. The moonlight cast pale ribbons across the remains of the ziggurat, and for a brief moment, it seemed as though the stones themselves exhaled, remembering. It was in this hushed hour that the stories of the city's underground heart began to resurface, not in the bustling chatter of marketplaces or priestly chants, but in soft whispers carried by the wind. Ancient cuneiform tablets hinted at subterranean chambers, vast halls carved directly into the bedrock beneath the temple of Enki. These were not mere storerooms for grain or amphorae of sacred oil. No, they were described as abzu, a word meaning the deep, the primordial waters from which Enki drew his wisdom and power. Scholars have long debated whether the abzu was purely symbolic or a real underground complex filled with pools, channels, and chambers that mirrored the cosmic oceans. Some explorers in the late 19th and early 20th centuries claim to have stumbled upon bricked-up passageways leading downward from the temple ruins. Their accounts, faded in brittle journals, spoke of air thick with salt, as if the sea itself lay imprisoned below. One described hearing the faint sound of water trickling, echoing far beneath the ground. Yet none returned with concrete proof, and those who lingered too long in the ruins reported feeling pulled by something unseen, as if invited or warned. The priests of Eridu were said to have guarded these depths fiercely. Access was permitted only during sacred rites, when chosen initiates would descend carrying torches soaked in resin, their flickering flames casting strange, dancing shapes on the damp walls. What occurred in those chambers was never recorded in plain words, only in cryptic phrases. The waters were spoken to. The stones knew the names of the stars. Modern archaeologists face a frustrating puzzle. Ground-penetrating radar hints at cavities beneath the site, but centuries of silt, shifting riverbeds, and collapsed structures have sealed them tight. Local folklore, however, insists that the abzu still exists intact, and that somewhere within, relics of unimaginable age remain untouched by human hands. Some go further, whispering of a throne. Not a mere ceremonial seat, but an ancient object forged for Enki himself, described in legend as being carved from a single block of lapis lazuli so polished it reflected the torchlight like a pool of midnight water. The throne, if it existed, was said to hum faintly when approached, as though the stone held a current of hidden energy. Could such a thing have survived? Or is it simply a metaphor woven into myth? Enki's seat of wisdom representing authority rather than an actual artifact. No one can say, but in the silence of Eridu's nights, when the wind snakes through the broken bricks and the shadows seem deeper than they should be, it is not difficult to imagine a hidden door, somewhere in the ziggurat's bones, leading to the heart of the abzu. And if such a door were found, would we dare to open it? Or would the waters of the deep, kept still for millennia, finally stir again? The unfinished chambers of Eridu beneath the dunes, archaeologists stumbled upon a section of Eridu that seemed frozen in time. Not destroyed, not abandoned, but left mid-construction. Walls of sun-dried brick stood half-finished, as though the workers had simply walked away one day and never returned. What made this even stranger was that these chambers were deep underground, connected by narrow, sloping passageways that felt more like tunnels than rooms. At the heart of this unfinished labyrinth was a wide, circular pit lined with bitumen, a material the Sumerians used for waterproofing. Yet no signs of water were found here. Instead, strange fragments lay embedded in the hardened black surface. Small, polished stones, seashells from distant shores, and what appeared to be pieces of crystal shaped into intricate geometric patterns. None of these items could be explained as part of routine temple construction. Some believe these chambers were meant to be a kind of ritual complex, dedicated not to public worship, but to something far more secretive, perhaps even an initiation site for priests of Enki. The presence of bitumen suggested that water might have once filled these rooms, creating a reflective, mirror-like surface. In Sumerian mythology, mirrors were symbolic gateways, and water itself was a sacred medium for communication with the divine. Could these chambers have been designed for a ritual where initiates would stare into still, black water, seeking visions from the god of wisdom? But another theory is far darker. Some modern researchers point to cuneiform texts that speak of the Apsu, the deep, primeval waters beneath the earth, where both wisdom and danger resided. Enki himself was said to dwell in a palace within the Apsu. Could these chambers have been symbolic reconstructions of that mythical realm, built to bring priests closer to the god's domain? Curiously, certain walls bore faint marks that did not match the Sumerian style of carving. Instead of wedge-shaped cuneiform, these looked like flowing, almost pictorial symbols, possibly older than the city itself. Were they remnants of a pre-Sumerian culture that had once inhabited the site? Or perhaps messages from wandering traders and seafarers who brought their own symbols to Eridu? The mystery deepened when ground-penetrating radar revealed something beyond these unfinished rooms. A massive sealed doorway, perfectly rectangular, set into a wall of hardened clay. No one knows what lies behind it. The excavation team halted their work there, citing safety concerns due to unstable sands. But whispers among the workers spoke of strange noises, low, resonant hums that seemed to vibrate through the ground at night. If this sealed doorway truly leads to another chamber, or even a hidden vault, then Eridu's greatest secret might still be waiting, untouched, just meters beneath the desert floor. And if so, what could have been so important that the builders never returned to finish it? The murmurs beneath the stones. The excavation team had now moved deeper into the heart of the Eridu ruins, following the faint line of a collapsed corridor that appeared to drop below the main temple's foundations. The air grew thicker here, carrying a strange mineral scent that clung to the throat. Dr. Rashid, ever the skeptic, found himself slowing his steps, not out of fatigue, but because the walls themselves seemed to hum with an almost imperceptible vibration. No wind, no movement, and yet, something lived in the stone. He knelt and brushed away a layer of silt, revealing a sequence of symbols, unlike standard Sumerian cuneiform, carved so delicately they seemed more etched by light than by hand. The patterns resembled water ripples frozen mid-motion. Beside them, a spiral symbol repeated 3 times, its inner coil disappearing into nothingness. Dr. Rashid's voice trembled as he whispered, "Enki's mark." The interns exchanged wary glances, but no one dared to break the silence. If these symbols were genuine, they might not just rewrite the history of Eridu, they might change the story of humanity's beginnings altogether. Yet just as they prepared to document the find, the sound of dripping water began echoing from somewhere ahead. Steady, unnatural, almost mechanical. It shouldn't have been possible. The site was miles from any fresh water source. The droplets seemed to sync with their heartbeats, drawing them toward a black archway at the end of the corridor. That's when one of the workers noticed something even more disturbing. The ripples in the symbols had subtly shifted position since they first uncovered them, as though the stone itself had all moved. The team exchanged hurried whispers, debating whether to proceed. But Dr. Rashid stepped forward without hesitation. He had spent his life chasing truths buried under centuries of dust, and he wasn't about to turn back now. The others followed, their lantern light pushing against the oppressive dark. The archway swallowed them whole. Beyond it, the floor dropped into a staircase carved from a single seamless block of black basalt. Each step was engraved with faint, glowing lines, pulsing in a rhythm that seemed almost alive. The deeper they descended, the more they felt an unshakable certainty. This stairway wasn't just leading them down, it was leading them elsewhere. Somewhere that had been waiting for millennia, and somewhere that might not want them to leave. Whispers beneath the stones. By the time the excavation teams had mapped the first layer of Eridu's underground passages, they realized something unsettling. The deeper they went, the less the architecture resembled Sumerian design. These lower levels were older, far older, carved from single blocks of stone with precision that would have been impossible for the early builders of Mesopotamia. The ceilings here were low, arched, and polished smooth, almost as though shaped by hands or tools no longer known to man. Along one wall, they found markings, not cuneiform, but a fluid, spiral-like script that curled and looped like flowing water. Dr. Alani, the lead epigrapher, swore the symbols looked like representations of sound waves, not language. "It's not writing," she whispered during a late-night study session. "It's an instruction, or a frequency." The strangest chamber lay beyond a set of narrow, descending stairs. It was circular, with a shallow depression in the center filled with water so clear it seemed invisible. When disturbed, the ripples reflected light in geometric patterns across the walls, patterns that matched the mysterious spiral script above. The effect was hypnotic, almost trance-inducing. The workers refused to enter this room after one man claimed to hear a voice whisper his name from within the water. And then came the most controversial discovery. A black stone pedestal, slick to the touch despite being dry, resting in the middle of that pool. Embedded into its surface was a faintly glowing greenish crystal. The crystal pulsed, slowly, almost like a heartbeat, every time a person approached. The ministry ordered the chamber sealed for preservation purposes. But the archaeologists knew the truth. The moment word got out about a glowing artifact beneath the oldest city in the world, Eridu would no longer belong to history. It would belong to every shadowy hand with enough power to claim it. Yet late one night, a guard overheard Dr. Alani speaking softly in that chamber, her voice low and deliberate, as though reciting something. The next morning, she was gone. No note, no belongings missing. Only the faint sound of dripping water in that forbidden room, echoing like a voice waiting for an answer. And still, the crystal kept pulsing. But what was it responding to? And more importantly, who? The vanishing waters. By the middle of the 3rd millennium BCE, Eridu was no longer the bustling heart of Sumer. The canals that once fed the city's crops ran low, their muddy banks cracking under the relentless sun. Archaeologists would later uncover layers of sediment that told a silent story. The waters had shifted, the riverbeds abandoned their course, and the lifeblood of the city had been stolen by nature itself. The priests claimed Enki had withdrawn his blessing. Some whispered that the underground chambers had been sealed not by man, but by the god himself, locking away wisdom humanity was not ready to wield. Others said the city's decline had begun the day foreign kings dared to claim Eridu's throne without honoring its ancient rights. Trade slowed, markets emptied. The towering ziggurat, once a symbol of divine power, stood alone against the wind, its baked bricks eroding with each passing season. Yet even in its fading years, Eridu remained a place of pilgrimage. Sumerians from other cities traveled here not for commerce, but for prophecy, seeking guidance in the shadow of its crumbling temples. The last recorded high priest of Eridu, a man named Lugalmeshe, left behind a tablet of troubling omens. Visions of fire in the southern marshes, a star falling into the sea, and a voice from beneath the earth calling for the gates to be opened once more. That tablet has never been found. Only fragments remain, just enough to suggest that even in its death, Eridu's story was far from over. And perhaps the city never truly died. Because somewhere beneath the dunes, where the ground still trembles after heavy rains, there are whispers of chambers that remain sealed, untouched since the day Enki's voice was last heard. But who would dare open them now? The first cracks in the empire. For centuries, the Sumerian cities thrived. Temples shone with the gold of distant lands. Their storehouses brimmed with grain, and the names of their kings were etched into eternity. But beneath this glittering surface, fractures began to spread. The mighty rivers that had nourished their fields began to betray them. Seasonal floods grew erratic, sometimes failing to come at all, sometimes arriving with such fury that entire fields were swallowed. Crops rotted in the mud or withered in the sun, and whispers began to ripple through the streets. Had the gods turned their faces away? Yet, the priests insisted the gods were merely testing their devotion, demanding more offerings, greater sacrifices. The people obeyed, but the temple steps began to feel heavier under their feet. Trade caravans returned half-empty, and foreign merchants spoke of rising powers beyond the horizon, distant lands where warriors marched under banners unknown in Sumer. Still, in the dim torchlight of council halls, the elders clung to the belief that Sumer's greatness was unshakable. But the cracks were widening, and soon they would split the very foundation of the world's first civilization. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the city gates, new shadows began to move. The last shadows of Sumer. The clay tablets speak less and less as the centuries pass. Once, their wedge-shaped marks told of kings, harvests, and the building of ziggurats that touched the heavens. Now, they record only grain shortages, tax disputes, and prayers that seem unanswered. The rivers that gave Sumer life, the Tigris and Euphrates, begin to betray her. The waters shift, choking old farmlands with salt, forcing villages to abandon the soil their ancestors had tilled for generations. It is as if the very earth has turned against them. Trade routes that once brought lapis from the east and cedar from the west fall silent. The great markets of Ur and Uruk no longer echo with the hum of foreign tongues. In their place, whispers of raids, foreign armies, and the slow encroachment of peoples from beyond the horizon. But in the heart of Sumer, a stranger mystery brews. Archaeologists today find entire storehouses sealed, untouched, as though abandoned in a single night. Why? Was it war, plague, or something more? Deliberate? The last kings still carve their names into stone, but their words feel hollow, titles without power. Temples crumble, their gods now silent, or perhaps listening in ways no one dared to imagine. And yet, one final question remains. If Sumer truly died, why do fragments of her symbols appear in far-off lands, in civilizations that rose centuries later? How did echoes of her stories, her gods, her laws survive, hidden in the bones of other cultures? Perhaps Sumer never truly vanished. Perhaps she slipped into the shadows, carrying her secrets with her. And if that's true, then somewhere, in some forgotten ruin, the final chapter still waits to be read. As the last flickers of torchlight died inside the half-collapsed chamber, the scribe's final words lingered in the dust-laden air, a prophecy half buried in sand, half buried in time. It spoke of a darkness that swallowed kingdoms whole, a wall of water that erased not just cities, but memories themselves. And of those who walked away from the ruin, carrying secrets never meant for mortal ears. For centuries, historians dismissed it as myth. But deep beneath the ruins of Nineveh, a single clay tablet would surface, its cuneiform etched with warnings that echoed eerily close to the great flood legends whispered across civilizations. And if the markings were true, the survivors of Sumer's final catastrophe were not who we think they were. Because what came after the deluge was far stranger than the flood itself.